I like to think of a difference between playing and practice. Now, I'll often pick up a bass and just play with no real aim in mind at all. And that's great just to keep me playing, it's good fun, and I come up with new ideas that way too. However, if there's a new technique or a new style of music or a new song I have to learn, I'll be a little bit more deliberate with the practice there. Now, usually that kind of means that I'm not very good at it or a little uncomfortable when I'm first doing that. And that really is the trick here, is just to push through that with consistent practice and then get better at that thing that you weren't good at. Now, if you just pick up a bass and just play, usually something that you're good at, you'll kind of plateau and not get much better after a while of doing that. So think of deliberate practice as taking something that you're not so good at and just going through that uncomfortable phase until you're better at it. A nice balance between just picking up your bass and playing cool things and learning new things through deliberate practice, I think will make you get much, much better. We all have different goals when it comes to learning the bass. You may want to play it for fun, or you may want to earn a living doing it. Now, I don't think it matters what you want to do, but consistency is going to be the key to getting better. Now, I think 10 minutes every day is better than 1 hour every week. But if you only have 1 hour every week, then do 1 hour every week, but be consistent. There are tons of different ways to practice, and you've probably read a million different things. It can be very confusing. But I think the best practice routine is the one you're going to stick to. Simple as that. If it's 10 minutes per day, great. If it's 1 hour per week, whatever. Just be consistent with it. So I have a bass on a stand right next to me. I switch on the mains over there and I switch on my iMac behind me, and within 30 seconds I'm ready to start practicing. Now, you don't need a fancy setup like this. My point is that even if you just have, let's say, a bass and an amp, have your bass out of its case, ready to go. Make it very, very easy. It's surprising how much of a barrier your bass being downstairs when you're upstairs can be. Make your practice setup ready to go. This comes down to being honest and patient with yourself. It can apply to anything from learning a new song to a new technique. Now, for example, let's just say that you're trying to perfect your right hand technique. And you're trying to get those fingers, the first and second fingers, alternating. But you notice every now and again it's just not happening. Now, at that point there, it's very easy just to ignore it. But what I'm saying is try not to, because if you do, you'll be embedding those mistakes into the way you play. And it's quite hard to iron those out after a while, okay? So hold yourself to a high standard and be disciplined and patient. If ever you notice a mistake, whether it's in a song you're learning or a scale or a technique that you're doing, just slow down, try and iron that out, and then go forward from there. The thing about the bass is that it's used in so many different styles of music, and lots of people need bass players. Now, if you've taken up the bass just because you want to play a few of your favourite bass lines at home, I don't actually have any problem with that. Go for it. But I think the most fun you can have and the most improvement to be had is when you join a band. Now, when I say a band, it could literally just be a friend who plays an instrument, could even be another bass guitar. I think that's where the improvement comes and where the fun is to be had. So I recommend definitely joining a band. If you don't think you're good enough to be in a band yet, what I would suggest is that you learn some very basic left and right hand technique. Maybe a couple of songs, but just really go for it because you probably are good enough. This one's a strange one. Now, everyone wants to play fast, don't they? It sounds so cool. But it goes back a little bit to what I said before about not practicing mistakes. Whoever could play that fast from the beginning? No one. What you have to do is you've got to make sure that every part of your technique is completely down, and then just play very, very slowly, either with a metronome or just without. I mean, I used to do it without and then introduce a metronome or a drum beat. But just make sure that at very, very, very slow speeds, you've got what you're playing down 100%. Because let's face it, if you can't play it at 50% speed, you won't be able to play it at 100% speed. So build up from a very slow speed upwards. Be sure to look at the video using a metronome from the groove section of this free course. Now, I mentioned there that having a great sense of timing and feel is I think the number one thing to have as a bass player. It's what your bandmates will love you for. So one way of developing that is with a metronome, but it could equally be a drum beat, or even better, a drummer, a real live drummer. Now, whichever you choose to do, I think a focus on working on that timing and groove is great. So I'd say get a metronome, use a few of those exercises I gave you, and use that in your practice. This applies to any situation you're playing the bass, whether it's practicing or a session or a gig, anything really. I don't think it's something that's really thought about that much, but I think it's incredibly important. Now, every now and again, I play the Xbox with 3 of my friends. I mean, once a year. And every time I do it, I get so tense after about half an hour. I notice I get what I call halo hands. And my hands are just really, really tight, and they hurt, to be quite frank. Now, that can really, really happen, halo hand, when you're playing the bass, okay? And when you do that, you're looking at problems further down the line, as well as impeding your natural ability to play the instrument. So when I say relax, I mean think about relaxing your shoulders and your arms. Don't tense up as I do when I play Halo. Just relax everything, okay? And also breathe. Now, this seems really silly to mention, but if you're doing anything that's difficult, you might notice that your breaths aren't going in and out very naturally, and you tense up. And this is a problem on stage sometimes. It might make you play faster. So I think if you're in a very relaxed state of mind and you're breathing very easily, that will come across in your playing, or can come across in your playing. So do be aware of relaxation when you're playing. It's not the easiest thing to play a bass. It's quite an unwieldy instrument. So be aware if you're sitting down, sit with a relaxed posture. Make sure your posture is upright and good and you're not slouching, and relax everything. So this will make you play better, but it'll also avoid injury in the future. The second you start playing the bass, you've unofficially joined the bass community, which is a great place to be. The history of the instrument, going back from the 50s onwards, as well as the major players and bands, is absolutely fascinating. I think the more that you can learn about all those different things, I think the more it fuels your passion for the instrument and for music. And when that happens, you'll find that if you get stuck in any ruts in your practice or anything like that, you can kind of check out a different player or a different style of music, and that will get you out of the rut. There's no greater way to learn than to learn from the greatest who have ever played the instrument. So the more you know about them and the different styles of music they played, the more you can kind of borrow their ideas and become a great player yourself. If you do find that you've got a bit longer to practice, I think it's a great idea to split that time up. So instead of just picking up your bass and playing, like we said earlier, maybe slightly aimlessly, I think have a bit of a deliberate game plan. You could start with a 10-minute warm-up and work on some new techniques that you're not very good at, for example. That could be 10 minutes. Then you could do another 10 minutes, or it could be 20 minutes, whatever's good for you, of reading or theory or whatever that you're not good at, okay? You can incorporate some learning new tunes into there, and then you can end with a little bit of a just aimlessly play whatever you like, which is sometimes where the good stuff happens. So have a little bit of a game plan with your practice and split up your time. One great way to improve is just to work on your weaknesses. Now, we all have them. Now, whether it's a technique or a particular style of music that you're not so good at, you'll know, because obviously you'll feel uncomfortable doing it, a little bit out of your comfort zone, okay? Now, when you have that feeling, that's telling you that either you're to practice that or maybe never play it again in your life. If you don't like it, great, just don't play it. But if it's something you want to do, then that's the thing to focus on. Try not to practice the things that you're good at. I mean, you're already good at them, right? So take the bad things, maybe take 3 things and incorporate that into your practice routine for the next few weeks. See how you get on. I often find that I don't use many of these tips that I've just given you because I don't have the time. Now, that's because I'm playing a lot. I do this full time. So a lot of my practice is just when I'm actually playing a gig or doing a session. Now, Will Lee is one of the great session players from New York, and this is his method. He's so busy now, he plays every day, and he never practices. I suppose he's been through a time when he's practiced when he was younger, and now practice for him is just getting out there and playing. So if you're in a band, get out there and use that as your practice time. If you're not in a band, join one, and that can be your practice time.